Well, hello, my friends. Welcome back to another episode of Legacy Farm, the podcast. I'm your host, Jace Young, and today's topic of discussion is this: when we finally awaken. So, guys, today I want to talk about just kind of the journey that we go through inside of our life here. And I'm talking to you from a perspective of some of the daily work that I've been doing here the past week or so. And this topic has come up a lot for me around this whole concept of awakening in life and finally seeing things for the way that they truly are versus us trying to paint a picture of what we would or how we would want things to be inside of our life, if you know what I mean here. Now, going through some of this daily work here, it's really awakened me to the fact that, when we're first born and growing up and things like that, if you grew up in small town America like I did, you were taught to believe and trust in certain things. You were taught to act a certain way. You were taught to have certain morals and values that once you get to a later stage in life, you kind of start to question a little bit. At least that was my experience. I started to question a lot of those things here because at the end of the day, I had to look at really the first part of my life and what happened during that time. And ultimately, if everything I was told or taught, trained, and conditioned to believe in that time was really giving me the fruit or the results that I wanted in my life. And for me, the answer was no, right? So I really had to go against a lot of the things that I again, was raised to believe and were told it was truth and taught, trained, and conditioned to ultimately believe here. Now, the thing that we have to see though, and really what we have to look at is really defining what is going to be the truth for you, okay? And once you actually get to the point where you're asking this question, this is where I feel like we truly awaken in our life. I truly feel like the first 25 years of my life, I was completely asleep. I was what we would call a wandering generality. I was doing things day by day and had no idea why I was doing them. It's just what I was told to do. I was basically, turned into a robot at some level. And a lot of people, they never awaken from this, right? A lot of people spend their entire lives being wandering generalities, moving throughout their day, just repeating the same task over and over and over again, never finding or living with any real purpose, drive, or motivation that's really going to serve them in what they want to do. And this is how I felt the first 25 years of my life. It really wasn't until I left the bank that I finally started to wake up. And I don't feel like I'm fully awakened yet. I feel like there's a lot of things that still need to come to me. There's a lot of changes I still need to make. There's a lot of growth and maturity I still need to achieve in my life. But the important thing, though, is that I finally started to ask the question at age 25, and that awakening process began. And the tough thing about awakening and why a lot of people aren't able to go through it is because you challenge everything you were taught, trained, and conditioned to believe growing up. Right? Think about how difficult that is for some people, especially if you grew up on the farm, especially if you grew up in a family where everybody was basically, told to believe the same thing across the entire family. And when you choose to really challenge that, you're not just challenging one person, you're challenging basically your entire family. You're challenging everything you learned in your childhood. You're challenging every belief that you've had up to this point in your life. And it gets really tough for a lot of people and they want to avoid that discomfort, which is why they never do that. And this is why it took me 25, 26 years of my life to finally have the courage to start asking those questions and really challenging all those things again that I was taught, trained, and conditioned to believe as truth growing up, recognizing that they weren't serving me later in life. And I finally had to find the courage to go against the grain of what my life had been up to that point. And when I went through this point, guys, it was really difficult. It was extremely challenging for me mentally and, physically. Mental exhaustion turns into physical exhaustion at some level here. And you just feel beat down every single day as you start to really rediscover what is truth for you and go through this awakening process. But here's the important thing. What I discovered going through this process is I had a lot of enemies essentially in my life. And I'm not talking about people, I'm talking about myself in a lot of ways here. But I had a lot of enemies that we could describe as basically your ego. And these, your ego can be made up of your beliefs, your values, again, those things that you're taught, trained, and conditioned, where these enemies in your life are basically shadows that you can't ultimately see until you finally start that awakening process. And this is the valuable part of going through this awakening process is you start to pinpoint and target and see very clearly those things that have been holding you back inside of your life. And again, the reason a lot of people want to avoid this is because there's going to be some conflict and collisions with the other people that they were taught, trained, and conditioned by to believe that this is truth. And once you start to fight against that or even question it, you're going to get some pushback, and rightfully so. Totally get it. But you have to have the courage, just like I did, to push forward anyway, because you're starting to awaken. And guys, I feel like God wants all of us to do this. I feel like the first part of our lives, again, we're taught, trained, and conditioned to be and act a certain way. But ultimately, during that first part of our life, it's like we're asleep, right? Again, just wandering generalities. And I feel like God has a path. There's a pivotal moment in all of our lives where He's giving us the opportunity to wake up, to finally wake up and start taking actions and doing things that will serve us ourselves, our families, our goals, our legacies, our futures, everything that he wants and desires for us, we have to be able to awaken in order for any of that to actually happen. And the thing is, though, is when you're doing this, is you can't actually awaken until you start to identify the enemies. And once you identify the enemies, the process ultimately starts. Now, I share all this with you because right now, some of you may be very stuck in what you feel, we can call the wandering generality land, right? You're doing things day after day. You have no real purpose or drive. You find yourself questioning yourself a lot, saying, what the heck am I doing? Why am I doing this? What is the purpose of this all? And guys, I'm just going to challenge you that just a simple fact that those questions could be entering your mind and maybe that it's time for you to start to wake up a little bit, right? And open yourself to new ideas or new thoughts about your world and your future and your life and everything that's happening in it. And ultimately, when this does happen, you're going to start making changes in your life. You're going to start making different decisions. Now, are those decisions going to be easy? Absolutely not. When we have customers coming to Legacy Farmer, everything that we're taking them through from basically a core 4 standpoint, which is body, being, balance, and business, but especially on the business standpoint, it challenges a lot of the ways that they thought they should be farming, right? Or running a business. A lot of those things that, again, we're just not taught, trained, and conditioned the right way, or at least that's what we've noticed in Legacy Farmer, especially when it comes to finances or running a business like that. A lot of people, they just don't have the education, the knowledge, or the tools to tell them the information that they need. And again, when we start going through this, it means we have to start making different decisions inside the operation. If you're working with a family, that means you're going to get pushback. No different than you going through the awakening process and starting to challenge all the beliefs and values and morals you were told to be truth as you were growing up, right? We just start to awaken here a little bit. And when we do that, we start to make different decisions. And once we start to make different decisions, you start to get different results. And so if you are at a point in your life where you are absolutely stuck, you feel like you are trying to swim in concrete, you're not gaining any ground, you're not moving, you're just sinking slower and slower into this, concrete or whatever you want to call it. And ultimately, you just don't feel like you're moving anywhere in life. And if you're at this point, then I would have you consider that you are stuck in an asleep phase or a wandering generality phase where God is waiting for you to wake up. And it's got to be you that ultimately chooses to do this by asking yourself different questions and entertaining the simple idea that, hey, is everything I was taught, trained, and conditioned to believe as truth in my life as I was growing up actually giving me the results or the fruit that I desire in my life today? For most of you, guess what? The answer is probably going to be no, which means we have to start asking different questions. And you have to really start thinking through all those things that you were taught, trained, and conditioned to believe is truth, and really start pinpointing which ones are lies for you in your life. Now, it doesn't mean that those weren't truth for the older generation. I'm not saying that. But what it means is today's world is different. The environment is different. The business environment is different. What we need to do to succeed and really fulfill ourselves in today's life is different than it was 50 years ago, 80 years ago, 100 years ago. And so in order to do that, the things that we need, the values that we need to hold true to our heart may be completely different than what we were taught, trained, and conditioned to believe growing up. And so it's your job to ask the question. Your job to step up and have the courage to do things differently, to act differently. And again, and this isn't just in business, but literally in every area of your life across all of core 4, body, being, balance, and business. And once you have the courage to do this, you will start to get different results. And that is not theoretical. That is a guarantee, because I experienced this in my life over and over again since I left the banking industry in 2016. And that was the first time that I actually started to awaken to my life and all the lies that existed, all the enemies that existed in my life up to that point, all the things that were holding me back from actually achieving the actual life that I wanted to live, guys. And at the end of the day, I had to start making some changes because it was my wife and 4 daughters in the house that were ultimately going to suffer the consequences if I did not find the courage to take the actions I knew deep down in my heart that I needed to take to go against all the things that I was taught, trained, and conditioned to believe is truth growing up, so that I could start to get different results inside of my life. And once I did that, everything changed for the better. Was there hardships? Was there challenges? Absolutely. But that is also what made it worth it as well. And if you have the courage to go down that journey, then you're just going to get completely different results than anybody else in your life. And you're going to be so proud of yourself once you get through it. So my friends, hope this episode was valuable for you. I hope it made you start to question some things and really start to pinpoint those enemies in your life and really sit with the question, have I been asleep, or am I actually waking up to what I need to do in my life? So my friends, that concludes today's episode. We will catch you on the next one.